Okay, so we were learning yesterday about the Sikrikin. Recall, Sikrikin is the murderer slash thief. He takes property to save your skin. And the halacha, the first version of the halacha was if you buy from a Sikrikin and the owner then sells it to you, the sale is invalid. If the first buy from the owner, then buy from the Sikrikin, and then the sale is valid. The later version, they said as follows: you have 12 months to redeem the property. If you don't redeem it in 12 months, then you buy it at the stolen value, which is, we'll soon see, it's about a quarter or less. We'll define it exactly what it is in a moment. It's about a quarter less than the value, and therefore, why is it less than the value? Because it's the pawn shop business, right? Everybody knows it's stolen, and stolen items are sold for less than items that were bought. Now, give me a second here. So basically, so the difference between the actual value and the price, because it's a stolen good, is given to the owner. And that's approximately a quarter. We'll get to the specifics in a moment. Okay. Now a very interesting story, the story of Gidel bar Eloi. That's what we're holding. Nun Chesam and Beis, about 5 lines above the white lines. First word on 58b. First word on the line is Gidel bar Eloi. And while you're finding it, one more point, which is the Gemara differentiated between thugs and Sikrikin. Sikrikin is guy who comes with a gun. The guy comes with the bouncer, he's called Anporis.
Because of what?
Anporis.
The Anporis comes with a what?
Bouncers. Thugs.
Like at a bar.
Yeah, correct. Thugs. He's a thug. He doesn't. They don't use lethal force. They're just thugs. So the Gemara says that these thugs do not have a din of Sikrikin, meaning the sale to them is never valid because it's always known that if you go to court, then the police will kick the thugs off the property. Okay, so now we're at the story of Gidel bar Eloi. Very interesting story. Gidel bar Eloi kabel ara betaska. Okay, so what happened? There was some sort of property tax. This is not very different than something that would happen today. So there's a property tax. Basically, they said this the city of Portland, has to pay $1 million in property tax. So there were 5 let's say there were 100 property owners. Each one's going to pay $10,000. Now, who has to pay the fee? The city of it's called, in this case, it's called the city of Baga. They had to pay the entire $1 million fee. Every one of them $10,000. I guess it was a little varied depending. The bigger the field was, the more you paid. The smaller the field was, the less you paid. The problem was there was one guy who wasn't in town, so he obviously wasn't going to make his payments. So what they do, they sort of collected the property and transferred it to a fellow whose name was Gidel bar Eloi. Gidel, we'll call him. He gave the field to Gidel, and he told Gidel, you work the field, you can keep the produce and pay the taxes, because otherwise we'll have to pay the taxes. Us, all other people of the valley, will have to make up the share of this guy's property. So Kabul Arab Baga. He accepted a property to work it for the people of Baga. In other words, the people of the Baga is the valley. So the valley people, they confiscated this empty property and they handed it over to Gidel bar Eloi to work the property. Okay, Gidel bar Eloi apparently was a very good farmer. He was very successful. He planted the field and it grew, leaps and bounds. So what did he do? He said, you know what? I'm going to pay the next 3 years worth of property tax. So he paid 3 years of property tax. Okay, what happens? Let's say at the end of the year, Asamar Vasa, the owner of the land, comes back from his trip. Asamar Vasa Kamoi Amrulay, he says, look, I understand the first year, I wasn't here, I wasn't around. You decided to work the property and make the payment. Fine, I get it, it's yours. Okay. But now I want the field back for next 2 years. Hashta, at this point, Ananya Vina, I'd like to work the field, I'd like to eat the field, I'll pay the taxes. Also, came to in front of our Papa. Rav Papa thought that, look, over here, in other words, what's the debate here? It's 2 years worth of property tax. Gidel bar Eloi says, look, I'd like the 2 years worth of property tax back. And the owner says no. So Rav Papa thought that it would be the responsibility of the people of the valley to reimburse Gidel for the taxes. If this is the case, you're really giving Gidel the law of Sikrikin. You're treating the owner coming back as a Sikrikin, and you're saying that the sale, the sale of the sale of his property by the people of Baga is as if Sikrikin confiscated the property, and therefore you're allowing him to collect from the people themselves. Rav Huna, the son of Rabbi Shua, says, he put his money on the horn of a deer. As they say, the deer was not stuck in the headlights. Yes, so he ran away with the money. It's interesting, there are other Talmudical mechanisms to require the original owner to reimburse Gidul Bar Ilai that for some reason don't appear to be used. It's not exactly clear to me why. It seems like Gidul Bar Ilai in the end got 0. Even though it would seem the original owner would have he saved himself 2 years of taxes. That alone is sufficient grounds to require him to pay. In other words, the owner saved the property tax the next 2 years. He should have to pay him back over the next 2 years. Maybe he did. That's just not mentioned. It could be added on. Okay, Zumish Rishayna Bezes Shalach Reim Amru Halakech Menasakrikin Neitz Labalam Revia. The later court says you have 1 year to redeem it. We'll review that in a moment, and then you have 1 year to redeem it, and then afterwards you paid back the original owner equivalent to the face value of the property subtracted by the cost of acquisition. The cost of acquisition, obviously, for an asset that's known to be stolen, you buy it from the man with the gun. It's obviously going to be sold for less than the market value, and the difference between that and market value is what you reimburse the original owner for. How much is that? It's a quarter. What does a quarter mean? Amar Rav says, Revia b'karka or Revia b'mois. You take, so let's say you had a field, okay? You spent you bought the field for $80 or 80,000 or 800,000, whatever number you want. Okay, $80. And then now it comes to so you bought it from the Sikrikin for $80. The original owner gets a quarter of $80, which is $20. Okay, according to Rav, the actual depreciation, $100 was the actual value. How much did it depreciate? 20%, which means you take 25% of the payment to get to the 20%. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
We together? No. So basically, you have a field that was worth 100.
Right.
How much does the field depreciate?
Okay.
20%. So now it's worth $80. So what is the payment that you make to the original owner? A quarter of that 20% payments, of that 80% payments.
Oh.
Which means that the depreciation or the payment that's made to the original owner, which is exactly the same, reflects 20% of the decrease in value of the total payment given, which is 25% of the cash paid to the Sikrikin, which is $20 is 20% of 25% of 80, which is 20% of 100. Okay. Shmuel says, it's 25% of the value, which is a third of the money paid. So in other words, so according to Shmuel, if the guy bought the field for $80, you divide 80 into a third, which would give you 26.67, right? 26.67, and that's what you would pay, because the field presumably is worth what would it be, 102.67, 102 and 2/3. Okay, so according to Shmuel, it's 1/3 of the according to Shmuel, if the property, for example, was worth $100, then Shmuel says it would be a 25% depreciation. In other words, so let's give the scenario where the property is worth the same amount as the previous scenario. It's worth $100. So according to Shmuel, the actual purchase price of the Sikrikin is not 80, it's 75. And therefore, the payment that you make is 25, which is a third of the cash payments. What's the debate? The question is, what's the depreciation? Marasav or Nechi Ravia Sav and Marasav or Nechi Chumshar. Shmuel and Rav debate whether the property depreciated a quarter or 20%. Meisvei, Zumish Rishona. Okay, so this Bryce is sort of an elaboration of what the Mishnah says. And what does the Mishnah say? Zumish Rishona. This was the first version, meaning that the sale of a Sekrikin was not valid, even if later endorsed by the original owner. So what they so Bezin Shalachrein, the later court, they changed that opinion. They said Amr Lakech when a Sekrikin Neisan L'Bailam Revia, they give to the original owner 1/4 of the value. V'yad Bailam Al Ha'alyona, and the original owner gets to choose Rotzu B'Karka. If he wants the depreciation, he can get that. Neitlin Rotzu B'Mois Neitlin. He takes a quarter, whether it's a quarter of the money or a quarter of the property. 1 second, hold on. Yeah, okay. Amosai, when is this true? If the original owner isn't able to redeem the property on his own, but if he is able to redeem it on his own, he comes first. Rabbi Hoshe Bezdin, Rabbi had the court rule, but Nimnu, and they agreed. You have 12 months to redeem it. If you don't redeem it within 12 months, then whoever else takes it, acquires it, but it will give to the original owner either Revia B'Karka or Revia B'Mais, either a quarter of the depreciation or a quarter of the money. Okay, now according to Shmuel, you give Shlish B'Mais, a third of the money. This seems to run counter to Shmuel. So Amarvashi Kitanya Hila Acha Shabo Mois Liyadai. So obviously, in one of these types of questions, the resolution is fairly simple. In other words, when the Bryce here says a quarter of the money, it means a quarter of the net money paid, which is the third of the money actually paid to the Sekrikin. The net money means the money that was paid to both the Sekrikin and the original owner, which effectively is the value of the field. So a quarter of that money is a third of the money actually paid to the Sekrikin, if the depreciation was 25%. Okay. Omar Rav says an interesting story. I know Havai b'minyana debei Rabbi. There we are, 59A. Yep. I know Havai b'minyana debei Rabbi. I was among the court of Rabbi as they were making this decision. An interesting thing happened. Uminoi didi manu bereisha, and I was the first one to be asked my opinion. Okay, so now the Gemara is going to take issue with this. So what happened? Rebbe had a court. We'll see what the normal procedure is, but the procedure in this case was they went to Rav. Rav evidently was not the eldest on the court. Obviously, he wasn't Rebbe. Rabbi Yehudah was much greater than Rav, much more senior and much more knowledgeable. So, but yet they went and they asked Rav his opinion first. Interesting story. The Gemara does not like that this story should be true. This can't be. When we have a question of Tumah and Tahara, or with regard to monetary affairs, the first one to opine on the opinion, on the question, is the oldest, the most mature, the most senior. So why was Rav being asked a question when Rebbe should have been asked first? Rav evidently was not the greatest of the bunch. He was sort of in the middle. There's actually two versions in Rashi. One says he was in the middle. One says he was actually among the least worthy of the group. But with regards to invoking and sentencing capital punishment, then maschilim and atzad, we start from the youngest. Why is this? So in general, capital punishment, we're very careful to conduct the court case in a manner which would provide the greatest possibility of innocence to the suspect. Now, give me a moment here. Now, and the reason for this is because if the most mature and senior opines first, we're concerned that everybody else will sort of go along with the flow. We're on the fifth line of 59a. Just review for a moment. So we have the what happened was Rebbe created this rule that if somebody takes property from Sikrikin, there's a 12-month redeeming period, and during that 12 months, the original owner is first. After that, he loses his right to the first steps, and then he gets the 20 or 25% payment. So Rav announces to everybody he was in the court at the time that Rebbe made this decision, and he was asked the opinion first. There's debate in Rashi. Rashi's one opinion says Rav was actually the smallest of the group. One opinion was he was in the middle. Certainly wasn't the greatest. Now, when it comes to laws invoking capital punishment, we start from the youngest, the least mature and senior, because we want to give the greatest possible room for leeway. And we don't want anybody being swayed by the leader of the court. So he has to give his opinion last. We start from the youngest, the least mature, and then we go upward. But by dinim amanis, we start from the most mature. Evidently, Rav was clearly not the most mature of the court of Rebbe, the most senior. Okay, Rabbi Brady Rava, the son of Rava, explained the Tamer of Hill Brady Ravalas, very interesting name, Valas, Shani Minyana de Rebbe de Kula Minyaninu Minat Sad Havel. Rebbe's opinion was that we always start from either the youngest or mid-range, somewhere in the middle. And he did that in all his cases. So apparently, the fact that Rav was called on first is not surprising. Okay. Now that we mention Ravalis, we say some other things in the name of Ravalis. V'Omar Rabba Braid Rava, v'Yitema Rapil Braid Ravalis. Mimais Moshe v'Ad Rebbe, from the time of Moshe Rabbeinu until Rabbi Yehudah Hanasi, Lamatzinu Torah Ugdula b'Makom Echad. It has never been the case that the greatest in Torah knowledge was also the wealthiest man. So Gemara has a bunch of questions here. I'm reading from the edited version in the Bach. Yeshua, there was Yeshua. Yeshua was a student of Moshe, also very wealthy. The Gemara says Hava Alazar, there was a Lazar. So the Gemara has a few questions here according to the edited version. Hava Alazar, Hava. Okay, he inserts it. Okay, so we'll go through it slow. We'll go through it slowly. Okay. So Gemara says Yeshua, there was a Lazar. Hahava Elazar, there was V'Hahava Elazar, there was Elazar who was the leader of the people, Elazar the son of Aaron Akayan, and also the greatest scholar. The Gemara says Hava Pinchas, there was Pinchas. Okay, V'Hava Pinchas. So Pinchas was the Pinchas was also very wealthy. The Gemara says Hava Zakanim. The 70 Zakanim of Moshe Rabbeinu had a tremendously long life. They lived a very long time, and their lifespan exceeded that of Pinchas. Hava Zakanim. Hahava Shaul, V'Hahava Shaul, there was Shaul. Shaul was the leader of the people, also a great scholar. Gemara says Hava Shmuel, there was a prophet. Shmuel the prophet. V'Hanoch Nafshe, Shmuel died while Shaul was around. As a matter of fact, the famous event, right, where Shaul calls Shmuel up from the dead. So the Gemara says V'Nafshe died. The Gemara says Kula Shani Kamrinan. We're talking about a scenario where a person's entire leadership period was untrammeled either in wealth or in prestige of Torah study. So there's nobody more wealthier and nobody more prestige in Torah study during their entire leadership life. Okay. V'Hava David, there was David HaMelech. Hava Ira Hayiri. There was one of the people in the time of David was Ira Hayiri, great scholar. But after he died, we require leadership during his entire leadership period. There was nobody greater than him in learning, and there was Hava Shlomo. There was Shlomo Melech. Hava Shimon ben Gera. There was Shimon ben Gera, who was greater than Shlomo in learning. The Gemara says Valkatle. One of the first things that Shlomo Melech did when he was appointed king was that he killed Shimon ben Gera, and he was commanded to do so by his father. Shimon ben Gera was killed fairly early into the rule of Shaul. Shaul he didn't kill him directly, he sort of tricked him, but ultimately speaking, he violated the law of the king and he was killed for his troubles. The Gemara says, nevertheless, Kula Shani Kamrinan, their entire life, because sort of Shimi was alive for maybe 2 months during the entire rule of Shlomo Melech, he's still not counted. The Gemara says, Ha'havat Chizkiah, there was Chizkiah. Hava Shivna, Shivna was also a great scholar who lived at the time of Chizkiah. Ha'ektil, he was killed. Kula Shani Kamrina, we're talking about his entire leadership life. V'hava Ezra, hava Nehemiah ben Chakalia. It was Nehemiah. Amar Vacha B'rei Rava. Okay, so Vacha B'rei Rava says, now that you're saying that it's from Moshe Rabbeinu and Rabbi Yehudah Hanasi, I say, Mimois Rebbe v'ad Rav Ashi le'matzinu Torah Gedula b'makam echad. From Rabbi Yehudah Hanasi and Rav Ashi, we don't find this either. The Gemara says, "V'loy, it's not the case." V'hahava Huna bar Noson. There was Huna bar Noson, shiny Huna bar Noson, to make of Havakaya Rav Ashi. Huna bar Noson at least pretended to be lower in stature than Rav Ashi, even if he was actually greater, but he acted as if he was less than. Therefore, we don't include him. We include Rav Ashi and not Huna bar Noson. Okay, next Gemara. Cheresh roimes v'nirmas. So if we have a cheresh, deaf mute, who has a reasonable amount of intelligence, so what can he do? He's roimes v'nirmas. He can receive hints and he can give hints. Lahavdil, if anyone was watching the Wall Street Journal, did a video of a guy surrendering to a drone.
Oh yeah.
You watched the video.
Yeah,
There's a
yeah.
famous video going around of Russian soldiers surrendering to a drone.
Oh yeah.
I watched the video, but I was very impressed with the Russian soldier because he thought of a way to communicate with the drone on the spot.
Right.
He figured it out and sort of was able to message the drone operators. So he was able to create the code on the spot without being told the codes, using his motions.
Right.
I thought it was a tremendous skill. I was extremely impressed by that. I thought it was something equivalent to the famous teacher of Helen Keller, which I love to quote. It was very impressive. Anyway, so this is a cheresh who's able to sort of create a language of communication. That works. That's valid. Ben Beseira, I remember Ben Beseira says we accept even a lower bar of verification, which is kaifetz v'nikbatz. Kaifetz doesn't mean jump here, it means to move your lips in a certain way. Lip reading, effectively. So lip reading, I have a friend who unfortunately can't hear, and he's very good with reading lips. He reads everybody's lips. You could see him when you talk to him. He moves his lips with you, and that's how he talks. He needs to see you when you talk to him. Anyway, but he does a fairly good job, and he's it's pretty close to absolute accuracy. But you also require somebody to hear from the deaf mute, so it requires two-way communication here, right? So not only there's the deaf mute reading your lips, but he's actually lip syncing to you. Okay, so Sarah says that works as well, and this is discussion with regard to metaltalin, the transfer of movable assets. We'll see why in a moment. Hapa'utais, these are young people who are pre-puberty. But you sort of realize that these are kids that are precocious. They know what they're talking about. Mekchan mekach memkar and memkar metaltalin, they're able to sell things and buy things with regard to metaltalin. Amar of Nachman, movable objects again. Amar of Nachman, machlekes metaltalin. This debate between Rabbi Yehudah ben Beseira and the rabbis with regard to a deaf mute b'metaltalin is specifically with regard to movable objects. Aval b'gittin. Let's say he wants to divorce his wife. Now remember, his marriage is a rabbinical marriage because we're not 100% certain that he actually knows what he's talking about. Al b'gittin divra kol b'ramiza. It requires remiza, which is emotion, a hint, much more direct hint. The Gemara says pshita b'metaltalin tanan. The Mishnah says metaltalin. Ma'ad tema, I would think af metaltalin tanan. In other words, that it's a debate both with regard to Gittin and with regard to metaltalin. In other words, the debate both movable object buying and selling and divorcing your wife. Kamashal, no, it's only debate with regard to metaltalin, movable objects, but with regard to a divorce, he needs a much more clearer motion. And again, even though obviously lip reading is a much more fine art, but the concern here is that it's also much more prone to inaccuracies. Whereas remiza is a much coarser art, but it's much less prone to inaccuracies. Okay. One sec. Okay, so fine. Iked Amri, second version of this Gemara. Amr of Nachman, Machlekes metaltalin, Kach Machlekes begittin. a debate with regard to metaltlin is the same debate with regard to divorce. They have the same debate. But the Mishnah says specifically movable objects, buying and selling. The Gemara says aim af metaltlin. The debate is also with regard to movable objects, buying and selling, but it's equal to with regard to divorce. According to Rabbi Yehudah ben Beseira, he can lip read or move his lips to tell somebody he wants to divorce his wife.
It's like selling something.
Yeah,
It's like selling
same.
a product his wife is like.
Same category.
Category.
Okay. Tanan. Emo. Sorry. Hapudas mekhamekacham kar memkar b'metaltlin. Pute said these young children who are pretty sharp. Ba'at kama, exactly what age? Machar of Yehudah Rav Yitzchak Bray, or Yehudah told his child Kfar Shish Kfar Shev. He gave an example of a 6 or 7-year-old. If Kahana Amar, if Kahana says Kfar Shev Kfar Tamni, Kfar Shev Kfar Tamni, a 7-8-year-old. Masisa Tana, the Bryce said Kfar Tesha Kfar Eser, 9 or 10-year-old. V'loi pligi, there's no debate. Kol Chad V'Chad Lefi Chorfei. Each one according to his sharpness. The time am I? What's the reason? Because it could be necessary for him to live. You know, he wants to be the. When I was some of these ages, you know, everyone had selling stuff, trying to make a couple of pennies here and there. You know, so if he wants to make a few dollars, it's acceptable, and therefore they allowed him to sell, even though, biblically speaking, the sale is not valid. Once we're on the discussion of Rabbi Abba Bar Yaakov in the name of Rabbi Yechanan, let's continue. Let's explain the following pasuk. Vayemer la'asher al hamaltacha. The translate maltacha is somebody who's in charge of the wardrobe. Maybe they have a better translation than I do. Haitzi levush l'chol ovdei habal. Bring out clothing for all those that work for the master. Okay, my maltacha. What is maltacha? Amar Bar Yaakov Amar Yechanan dover hanimlo v'nimtach. What does it mean? He's the maltacha. Maltacha is a very specific name. It refers to the wardrobe manager here, who's a maltacha. What does maltacha mean? Pishtan, specifically flax. Why flax? Because apparently flax stretches as you spin it into wool, into threads. And I'm not. Gary's not here today. Maybe somebody could explain this better. I'm not familiar with flax at all. I don't think I've really interacted with flax very much in my life. Not a common material again today. They had using linen and some stuff, but it's not a common material. Okay. Amar Baba Yaakov. Kiyas Rav Dimi Amar Yechanan. So Rav Dimi, in the name of Yechanan, continues to expound on these specific types of flax. Shigali Bunayim Benuniyim. There's apparently a very wealthy person sent the Rebbe 4 types of flax. They're called sivni, hummus, salsala, umilmala. Sivni v'chummus. So these were very large garments. These were like big sheets, but they were such fine flax that they would fold up. Sivni v'chummus would fold up like a nut and a half. So you have this massive sheet. It folds into this little tiny thing. Apparently, again, I'm not a material scientist, and I'm not familiar with how these things work. Apparently, it was very long, thin, high quality threads that you were able to make something so small.
It's not those tells that you buy in those tells that you buy.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Salsala umamola. These things of salsala umamola were also very large garments, and they turned into kipsikta upalga de pistaka upalga de pistaka. I don't exactly know what a pistaka is, but I do know that it's used to feed pigs.
They talk about acorns.
Acorns. Okay, there it is. So Rashi translate. Okay, apparently pigs eat acorns. I didn't know that. Rashi translates it's the food of pigs. It's an acorn and a half. So it's also a very large garment. It shrinks to the size of this acorn and a half. My milmala. What is milmala? It's another variety of flax, and why is it called milmala? Dover hanimlo v'nimtach. Apparently, when you spin it to turn into threads, it sort of stretches out. Okay, v'te'usan at kama. What's if you made a mistake in the value? What would be the rule that the item would go back? Achtus gegadol. 1 second. Sorry, this would be. In other words, if you made a mistake with the pe'utay, so you made a deal with these kids, you wanted to buy something from the kids, and you made a mistake. You either overbought or he undersold, right? Or the opposite. You cheaped him out. You bought less than the value, or he sold it, and he sold it for less than it was worth. what's the percentage of difference where we'd say, okay, this is such a big difference that the sale is no longer valid. Gemara says it's the same as an adult, 1/6. It was 16.67%. Baya.
Why are they avoiding this?
So because the difference between the net actual value and the sale was at least 1/6, 16.7%, 1/6, which is the standard rule of Ano. Okay, Ano is it's actually fairly complicated to avoid a sale because of Ano. It has to be done basically immediately. So there's no waiting. You wait around. There's no Ano. You can't claim Ano anymore, and you can only claim Ano for things that are sold by weight that have sort of a net actual value within range, etc. It's complicated. It's not for now. Okay, boy Abaya. Abaya had a question. Matnose mai. Can this little Peutis guy, this little Peutis kid, can he give a gift? Rav Yemer Omar, ein matnose matona. The gift is not valid. Mar Ravashi Omar matnose matona. It is valid. So Mar, the son of Ravashi, says the gift is valid. What they do? They did the following trick. Afchu, the students of the study hall, they switched around the authorships. So they said that Rav Ashi says, the son of Rav Ashi says, the sale of the matana, the gift, is not valid. And they sent the question to Rav Mordechai. Go tell the son of my teacher, the son of Rav Ashi, was the following story not happened? He was walking up the ladder to go up to the study hall. We asked him, what's the story with the gift of kids? And he said, the gift is valid. Whether the gift was given as one of a terminally ill patient, or whether it was a healthy person, whether it's a large or small amount, a child's gift is valid. And therefore, tell Rav Ashi's son that he's making a mistake in what his father said. Now, apparently, it wasn't actually a mistake. They just either when they wrote the letter, they intentionally switched it, or it happened by accident. Okay. The following enactments were ruled because of keep the peace. First one is Kohen Kara Rishon. Kohen gets the first aliyah, v'achrav Levi, then a Levi, v'achrav Yisrael, and then a Yisrael. The Dark Shalom to keep the peace. Ma'arvin b'bayis Yoshem, Dark Shalom. If you have an Erev Chatzeres, I believe our Erev Chatzeres is right up there, that thing. And apparently, if you want the Erev Chatzeres to be in your house, we will not accommodate your request, and the shul will keep the Erev Chatzeres exactly where it is right now. We do not switch the Erev Chatzeres, even if the house got old. We just keep it in the same place. You have a stream going downhill. The closest pit, so the pits were used to sort of cisterns. Were used to they acted as reservoirs. If the stream ran dry. Who has a right to fill up the reservoir first? The ones that are closest upstream to the stream. If you have this little creek, fills up the highest, closest first, then the more distant higher, then the lower down, closest first, then further out. Just that there should be an organized pattern. Otherwise, it would be a free-for-all and it would be a lot of fights. You have traps, you lay traps, you caught the fish. Problem is, somebody sees the fish caught in the trap. Now he wants to take advantage of it and reel it in himself. So Gemara says, if you steal from that, yesh b'hem mishum gezel b'nedar shalom. We want to keep the peace. So we say anyone who catches something in a trap, even if it's a type of trap that is, if it's a trap that it enters into the trap like a squirrel trap, then it belongs to you because your trap is acquired on your behalf. But if it's a trap like the nets they use, they're gill nets. So they catch the fish by the gills. So the fish is not technically inside of anything. It's just gills are trapped in a mesh. These are what the Native Americans used to catch salmon. Oregon will not give you a license to catch with a gill net. Only the Native Americans are allowed to do that. So in that case, it's not considered stealing. He never acquired it. It's just stuck in his net. But to keep the peace, you would not be allowed to take it. That would be absolute thievery. If a deaf, mute, deranged man or child has something, they find a lost object, you can't take it from them. To keep the peace. That would be absolute thievery, stealing. Okay, so this is in America we had to do this with the cranberries and other fruits. Basically, he went to the head of an olive tree and he starts shaking the tree, and all the olives fall down. He puts his towels underneath and he catches all the olives. Doesn't acquire the olives until he actually picks them up. But he's sitting there on top of the tree, shaking the tree. So one guy conveniently comes and just pulls all the olives out from underneath the tree. Don't do that. Because to keep the peace. Rabbi says if you did it, Gezel Gomer, it's absolute stealing. If a non-Jew wants to collect leket shikha upeya, we do not stop him because we want to keep the peace. That poor people of any religion or any can take leket shikha upeya, which is one of the reasons also. Which one is giving charity to a Jew, and there's a non-Jewish destitute man right next to him. Maybe you should give him something. It's not entirely inappropriate, and it probably is a good idea. You have to give him a lot of money, but you should also, at least, if they're both collecting in the same place, at least give him attention enough to notice him and give him something as well.
So they don't burn down the village.
Okay, stop there.
Yeah.
Okay, tomorrow we talk about the Elias. Who gets called to the Torah first?